Hey everybody, it's Luke from Sunworks again. What we're doing here today is going to walk you through how to replace your TMax timer board and also the TMax communication chip on that timer board. Sometimes you may find that you have issues with your booth falling off the network, or you scan your network and your TMax manager up front does not find the booth. So we're kind of going to go through how to replace the components that involve the timer system and how to get your booth back onto the network properly. So to gain access to the side of the booth, what we're going to do is reach up here, and your booth may or may not have a screw in here holding this panel in. If it does, you're going to want to undo that screw. If there's not a screw there, you simply can put your hands up here, pull on the panel, and that's going to give you access to the back of the booth. So now that you've gained access to the back of the booth, what we're going to do is we're going to move up top here, unscrew one of these vents, just using a 4-in-1 or a Phillips head just to loosen up. See if we can just pull this down. And what it's done now is gained you access to this PLC cabinet here. And what we're going to do now is we want to get into the PLC cabinet, and we're going to do that by unscrewing 1, 2, and depending on your booth you may have 3, 4 total screws in it. And then down here, this lip right here just holds this access panel door on. These particular screws on this booth are a 4mm Allen wrench. They also may be, depending on how tight, if you've worked in there before, they may be hand tight, so you may be able to unscrew them by hand. If not, just get, like I said, a 4mm Allen wrench, and we'll unscrew those 2 screws and take this panel off. Now, once we've taken those 2 screws out, there's a couple things we need to do to disconnect this sound amplifier. First, on the left-hand side, you'll see the RCA cable. We'll go ahead and pull that out. Secondly, you'll see this white 2-pin connector. And what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect that as well. So what we're going to do now is disconnect this 2-prong white connector. So just pull that out. Now I've also gone ahead and I've got all of my screws removed out of this panel. So what I can do now is I can just lift off this access panel door. Now hold on to it though, because there is still one connection that needs to be undone. But this now shows you the inside of the PLC cabinet. The last connection, you'll see there's a brown wire coming from the access door, or I'm sorry, gray wire coming from that access panel door, and you'll see that that goes down to a certain type of connector here. So we're going to disconnect that connector, and then that will allow us to rest this access panel door on the floor and get it out of the way so we can work easier on the booth. In the case of this booth in particular, there was enough slack on that cord that I could just rest this access panel door on the floor. So depending on how much room you have in the room you're working on and how much slack is on this particular cord, you may be able to keep that connected. Next thing we're going to do whenever you get inside of this PL cabinet is to disconnect the power. And all of the booths, this is a Plus series booth we're working on now, but over here is a main breaker that you can use to turn off power to the whole booth. Or what you can do is you can unplug the booth from the power supply at the wall. So this particular booth, what I'm going to do is just hit the breaker here, and you'll see now we've taken off power to the booth. Now right up here, this is the actual TMax control board. You have in the back here your communication cable running into it. So depending on how your particular network is wired, whether it's a backbone network or a daisy chain, you may have one cord going in here, or you may have two. One coming from the previous booth or tanning bed, whatever piece of equipment you have, and then the other cord going out to the next piece of equipment. This particular booth just has a communication jack in the wall, so that's why only one cord coming here. So in some instances you may have to replace the entire TMax board, or you may be able to just replace the communication chip on the back depending on what the symptoms are and what problems you're having. In this particular case, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to take the whole board off and then show you on the back where the actual communication chip is. So what you're going to do here is you're going to get a flathead screwdriver, and you have here on the board, you've got 1, 2, 3 vinyl flathead screws. We're going to go ahead and unscrew all 3 of those. So now when we get these screws undone, you may not have to take them all the way out, but now what you could do is you can just take this whole board right off of the mounting bar that it was mounted to. Okay, so this is the whole TMax board. On the back here where you see it says XT Modbus version 1, that is the actual communication chip. And what you want to be careful of anytime you're replacing a chip on any sort of board is you want to make sure that the chip you replace is facing the exact same direction as the one you took off. And what I mean by that is on the left-hand side of the board, or the chip rather, you can see that little half circle, semicircle. Make sure when you're putting your new board on, or new chip on, that the new chip is facing in the same direction as the old chip you took off. Then also what we're going to do here, if I had a new board that I was going to be putting on, what I want to do is make sure that all the communication cords that I pull out get replaced onto the new board in the same spot. Once you've made all the necessary changes and connections to your board, you're ready to go ahead and screw the new board or the old board with the new chip back into place. So now you've got your new TMax board screwed in. What we can do now is go ahead and turn power back onto the booth, and when we do that, you'll see the display will light up, and then what it's going to do here is go through the boot up process, and you'll see that 0.5 means that it's addressed as room number 5. If you're putting in a new board, what you're going to need to do is readdress this to the proper room number for the salon you're in. So to readdress the proper room number for the TMax board, what you're going to do is you're going to hold the start stop button and the up arrow button, and you're going to hear a series of beeps. And you just hold it till you see P dash. Then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit the start button, and as I showed you before, this room is currently addressed as room number 5. Depending on what your board comes up at or what room your booth is in, you may need to change this, and you'll use the up down arrows to make sure you're addressing it as the right room number. One thing you always want to keep in mind with the TMax is this red button needs to be solid red. If this is a flashing red, you're over the number 100, so you'd be addressing this as room number 106 if that were flashing. So that's a common mistake people make, is that if the booth's not showing up on your network, you come back and check the TMax board, and if this is flashing, you're addressing it as room 106 rather than 6. So this particular booth again is in room 5, so I get it to 5 and I hit the start and everything is good. One way you can double check since you're in here is go ahead and hit that power off with that breaker. When you reboot the booth, you'll know if it's taken to that address, because it will show you after it does its reboot process that you saw that 5, so now you know it's in room number 5. Okay, so now that you've got your new board installed, you're ready to go ahead and close up your PLC cabinet. And to do that, you've got a total of 3 connections to put this access panel door back on, the one that has the amplifier for the sound. So again, depending on whether you could leave yours connected or not, your first cord is going to be the cord that comes off the back of that door panel. This one I was able to keep connected, so that one is already connected. The next one is this red RCA, and then you have your 2-prong white connector. So a total of 3 connections are all that need to be made to put the access panel back onto the PLC cabinet. One thing to keep in mind when you're hooking up this RCA connection over here is that you have 2 channels. You have a left and a right. And sometimes you may, if you put this back together and for some reason your voice guide is not working, there's no sound coming out of the booth, one of the common culprits is that you have your RCA cable in the wrong port. An easy way to check that is come over here. These are your actual speaker wires, and you can see that those also correlate left-right. So what we have here is you see that these particular wires are going into the right, and we have no wires going into the left. So what that means is I'm going to take this RCA, this red RCA, and I'm going to put it into the right channel. Then the final hookup for this is my 2-prong white plug. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put these screws back in, tidy up the PLC cabinet, and close up the vent, and we're good to go. So then what we do is we tidy up that air vent, and then we close our booth up by putting this decorative panel back in. And all you need to do this is take this top corner, and what we're going to do is we're going to bow the panel a little bit. And you see what I'm doing here? I'm just bowing the panel so I can get that to fit in this groove here. And then as it goes in, I just start pushing my way down. And that back panel is in.